I actually wasn't sure about doing a live tonight because of how bad that I feel, but I decided that we'll just make it a short one instead of skipping doing it entirely. Um, I've just been having a rough couple of days, and I guess today it's just kind of accumulated to where I'm just really, really sore. I've been doing a lot of healthy stuff in a month and working out a lot. And I think that my body's just hit an area where I'm just kind of in a recovery phase. Um, Plus, I was helping a friend out this weekend too, and I had a little bit of a mental breakdown last night, like just a little one that lasted about an hour and a half. I was talking to my best friend and um, ended up crying, and talking about stuff for an hour and a half. Um, which I feel perfectly fine emotionally now. I'm just physically exhausted and fatigued and sore all over. Um, but it ended up leading to me crying about my kids, but that's not what had started it. It was actually uh, an ex fiance, um, like not any recent relationship. It was someone I was engaged to for a few years that I still haven't gotten over the thought of them and entertaining the idea that one day we'll be together, that one day there'll be a healthy individual and that I will too, and we'll get back together. But then there's been a lot of things that's happened between us. At this point, I don't think that could ever happen. And I don't know if somebody like that could change, that is that severe of an addict. Um, which made me realize that's why I wanted to talk about addiction tonight, not so much focused on them, but focused on myself and realizing like why I'm in such a better place in my life. And every once in a while, I just crash and have all of these overwhelming emotions that just where I'm just consumed with thoughts about them still, even though I know that I can't go back to them and that would be a bad choice to make for both me and them. If they're ever to recover, I can't get back with them because we have a pattern of behavior in the past that is unhealthy, where I, behaved very codependently with them and was very enabling. And I didn't realize I was being enabling, but I was. And if anything, I feel like maybe I was making it worse because they couldn't really be open and honest with me, even though it's like I was more accepting than most other people who have my set of morals and beliefs would. But at the same time, it's like I wanted them to be honest with me, but then at the same time, when I would find out about them using or doing different things, then I would just, you know, I would feel so triggered and hurt and upset about it that then I would just be frustrated and be like, "Why can't you get it together?" Why would you lie about it? Why did you hide it? And then, like, why are you going there and using, or, why are you looking at porn? All that sort of thing. And so I feel like my controlling nature and my addiction to them and the things I needed from them made that worse. And I think because most of my life, since I can remember, has been involved with toxic relationships, like pretty much every relationship of every kind in my life has been toxic since I can remember, like since being a little kid. Um, and I that was kind of behavior and relationship was modeled for me, with my parents and friends' parents and stuff. And the movies kind of glorify that type of relationship too. They don't show the truth of those types of relationships a lot of times and just make it seem normalized. And I'm at a point in my life where I am aware and I know that these things are normal, and I'm not really sure. what is normal as far as relationships now, which is why it's like I tell people right now, like I have a lot of advice and knowledge I can give to people, but right now, because of the things I'm dealing with my own life, with philosophy and, past experiences, I don't feel like I'm the best person to ask about love advice because I'm kind of in a transitional period in my life where I'm no longer sure what that means. I want to be in love someday with somebody, but at this point, I don't know if being in love is just another drug, because for me in the past, that's what it's always been. Like that was always my addiction, was being in love with somebody. And this particular person was like crack to me. It was literally the worst kind of love addiction because it's still affecting me now. And what happens is when you have these toxic relationships, like some people want to act like that you don't understand if it's not a physical substance. But the thing is drugs and alcohol, all of those physical substances that people get hooked on, which I've never had an issue with. Even though after I lost my kids, I did drink for 6 months, I was able to get to a point where I just, in my mind, I decided that this is no longer what is serving me. This is not me anymore. And I viewed it as a toxin. And I guess psychologically, I caused myself to have a physiological reaction that I changed the DNA in my body to then rejecting alcohol. So, like, I can't even physically drink alcohol now because I have a severe adverse reaction to it, to any amount. And, so substances have never really made me addicted. It's always been a romantic relationship, or not just romantic, every kind of relationship. Like I've been really bad about people pleasing and wanting love from others, and trying so hard to get love from other people. And I kind of had this thing too, this philosophy, I guess, that I developed as a teenager, of thinking that you had to suffer for love. And part of that I do blame on some misleading stuff, I guess, in the Bible with my religious upbringing, um, because I think some things are taken out of context. And in my mind, when I was a child reading different things in the Bible, I interpreted it as that, God loves those who suffer the most and who have the worst lives and stuff like that. And so at a young age, I put in my mind that I wanted to have a hard life because I felt like, because I hadn't had as hard of life or childhood as my mom had or some other people, that I didn't I wasn't I didn't deserve God's love, and I wasn't as loved by him as other people. And so I wanted to have a hard life, and now I have. And I was like, well, that was stupid. That was pointless to go through that, because now I know that that's not true. And that, you know, that God doesn't love in the same way that we do. If you even believe in that sort of thing, you don't have to believe in that sort of thing. That's just my own personal thing, which has nothing to do with addiction. But that was what kind of led to me having the philosophy of thinking that love was suffering. And so, of course, I ended up attracting relationships that involved a lot of suffering. And so, for me, like I said, substances haven't has never been the issue, and I've never really, even though I do, like, psychologically and logically and mentally and medically, I understand addiction as far as to a physical substance. For me, I've never had that issue. I've usually have always had an adverse reaction, and then any of the ones I had a positive reaction to lasted like a very short amount of time before they immediately became negative to where I couldn't use. Um, so I never actually became addicted to substances, but people, on the other hand, in toxic relationships, yes. And this person in particular is like my crack. He is the worst. Like, he's my fatal attraction. I was in two serious relationships before him, and I've been in two supposed to be serious relationships after him, and he's still the one that triggers this inside of me. And I kind of understand this. I finally connected it last night because I keep trying to find meaning for it. Like, why do I keep having these feelings for him? What is, what is the meaning? Like, why? Why does it keep coming back? Why do I think I'm fine and then suddenly I'm not fine? And it's because we when whether you're addicted to substances or whatever, it's all based on your brain and the chemicals in your brain. That is what people get addicted to, is their own body's chemicals, which you can actually use other things like meditation or whatever to access those same chemicals. Like, some people, they get addicted to working out. And like, you can get addicted literally to anything. And it's because it's your own chemicals in your own brain that you're becoming addicted to. Substances, the only thing that they do is they trigger those chemicals in an unnatural way so that you get like an overload of those chemicals. And then it changes the chemistry of your brain to where your brain thinks you have to have that substance to access those chemicals. And then it actually damages the brain to where you cannot produce those chemicals like a normal person anymore. And that's one reason why addicts are so prone to relapse, especially people like some of my exes who were addicted as children almost. They were addicted to things at a very young age and have are lifetime users of substances. And for people like that, I mean, it could take 5 or more years for their brain to ever normalize. Um, and so for me, what I'm realizing is, um, from my experiences, I say I've never been addicted to a substance. I was addicted to smoking cigarettes. That was the only one I had a hard time with. And, but I guess at some point with it, I just decided that I was allergic to it, I guess. I'm not really sure how that came up. I just suddenly couldn't smoke anymore. But that was the last that was one that I did for a very long time, even though it was obvious it was killing me and making me sick. Um, but um, but anyway, so yeah, so cigarettes was one that I had a hard time with. Um, so because of my experience with smoking and having withdrawals from cigarettes, I realized last night when I had that, over yesterday, I was just overwhelmed with these high negative emotions and this desperation and neediness, and just like I had to have my ex. Like, I had to have him more than anything in life. It was like so powerful that, it felt like my soul and my heart was being ripped out of my body and that I was going to die. Even though I knew logically that I wasn't, it was still very overwhelming trying to get through that. And then, like I said, I ended up just finally for an hour and a half just breaking down crying and talking to my best friend, who's his brother and is not for us getting back together. Um, so, but today waking up, I realized that it reminded me, or last night actually, when I felt a lot better, it reminded me of when I would be withdrawing from a cigarette really bad. And it's like the only thing that could make me feel better was a hit off of a cigarette. And But then, like I said, after I had that outburst for like an hour and a half of just crying and having a post-mortem about the relationship and talking about the possibility of a future that is unrealistic, um, and then I ended up realizing that that's what this is. It's an addiction. And because of me being in toxic relationships, just like any other drug addict, the chemistry of my in my brain is not normal anymore. Which is another reason why I cannot say what being in love actually is, because for me, being in love is a drug and it is extremely toxic for me. And I hope that one day I'll be able to have a healthy version of being in love, if such a thing even exists. Or if being in love is just so that humans can procreate and keep life going on the planet, or spread your genes, your DNA, distribute it into the world so that you can have a legacy. Um, because that's been proven that's what happens when you fall in love. It makes you stupid. It's your brain pumping you full of chemicals to try to make you have to be with someone to, what do you call that? Pair bonding, so that you can pair bond with them and have children. And even if you're past the age or you're physically unable to have children, your brain is still working the same way. It's still those same chemicals where you're just, evolution has designed us that way. So that's why it's best not to ask me about love right now, because I am trying to be as reserved and as far away from that as possible. And I know I need to be alone for probably several years before my brain will be able to be chemically normal. Because all of my life, I've had these toxic relationships where you have these extreme highs and extreme lows. And that's what creates an addict. It's just like any other drug. You get the drug, you get feel good feelings, all these chemicals that make you feel good. For some, it's dopamine, for some, it's serotonin, for other people, it's a combination. Um, Adrenaline is another, like some people who like cocaine, they like the adrenaline effect. And like when you're with somebody and you're fighting, you don't think about this because it doesn't feel good. Which is probably some another reason why I would not want to do any kind of upper, because to me, having my heart racing and being hot and agitated does not make me feel good. I want energy, but normally anything that gives you energy is too much for me. But when you're fighting with somebody, your body goes into fight or flight mode, your adrenaline shoots way up. And when you're in these toxic relationships, you have these severe fights or arguments, or long ongoing arguments that could last for days, because the relationship's toxic. So there is no resolution to the argument. The other person will never admit that they are wrong. And for some of them, it's not even good enough if you admit that you're wrong. And they just want to, because some of these people, they're addicts too. So for them, these feelings are normal for them. And then when you're in these types of relationships, it becomes normalized for you too. So, you may have had the behavior modeled to you. And so you thought it was normal. So then when you experience it, you kind of feel like, I don't think this would be normal. But then because you've seen it in movies or seen it from your parents or from other people in your life, you end up convincing yourself, well, maybe it is normal, and that will get through whatever this is. And then by the time you end up coming back around, it's like you're already in it. Your brain chemistry has already changed and you're already addicted to this abusive, toxic relationship cycle. And so you have these fights, you have the high adrenaline, fight or flight. And then after everything comes back down, then you end up like, a lot of times these people, they, want to fight just so they can kiss and make up. And so then, if it's especially a romantic relationship, you end up having sexual intercourse, and then that causes you to have an overwhelming amount of like oxytocin and stuff. But even if it's not sexual, you can have that oxytocin chemical released in your brain from like, hugging or maybe it's a toxic friend, and just the relief of knowing that you guys are fine and they care about you and they love you and everything's okay, and you have their approval now. You are good enough now. Then, you get all these overwhelming good feelings. Um, and so it can go back and forth. And then of course you also have the depression part, too. And even in a relationship, you kind of go through a withdrawal phase because the person a lot of times will remove their presence from you or withdraw their love from you or their approval of you. And so then you end up having this addiction. It's just like a rat who, like, they've done this experiment with rats where you have inconsistent love or inconsistent feedings, inconsistent rewards. And that happens a lot in these relationships too, which the inconsistency is what creates the addiction. So, like, if you have a rat do something to get a reward, they end up learning what they need to do to get the reward. But what they end up doing is they inconsistently will reward it. So then the rat doesn't know what it has to do to get a reward. And so there's like a button it has to press to get the reward after it's done a task. And if it's done inconsistently, the ones that they did this consistently with, once the treat stopped coming, they moved on. The ones that they were treating them inconsistently to, you know, in response to what they wanted the rat to do, it would end up staying there pressing the button just constantly. It would become addicted to that button, waiting for that fix, waiting for them to drop the treat until it would die. It would literally thirst and starve itself to death because it got so fixated on that button. So that's the addiction side of it. And it's the same way with relationships. When you are loved inconsistently by somebody, that's toxic. Like, there should be clear rules and boundaries in any kind of relationship as far as what is acceptable of yourself and the other person in that relationship. And it shouldn't be inconsistent where you've done nothing wrong or the person has imagined you did something wrong or just wants to punish you because you may have or may have not done something wrong 2 months. Suddenly now they're punishing you for it. But it's very inconsistent. They withdraw their love from you, and then you're withdrawing, fighting to get it back. And then when they finally do give it to you, it's like you've been so depleted and deprived of any good emotions, and then all of a sudden they give it to you, and you have this rush of endorphins and all these good feelings. And that happens in these toxic relationships. Sorry, my dog's barking for some reason. But the other thing is after the fact, like where I'm at now. Sorry, I don't know why he's barking. I don't know if somebody has showed up or what, but um that's the addiction part of it. But there's the other part, which is after the fact, the grieving and the trauma, which is where I am at. And something that I've been listening to is a very short video, by the way, on Richard Grannon's channel, where he was answering somebody's question about how they've been doing all the right stuff. They're going to school, working out, taking care of themselves. They're doing all these things, but they are still stuck. They are still grieving. They still, have all this trauma and this pain and can't move past it. They still have the complex post traumatic stress disorder, which I believe that I have. Um, and the reason why that I've realized tonight is because of not being able to find meaning for, like, the hurt, for the pain, for the loss. I think that's one reason why a lot of people, like, this is a CPS, channel. I think that's one reason why a lot of parents, especially mothers, because men seem to handle child loss better than women do. Um, and but it could go either way, you know. There's some women out there who don't care, and it's the father that was the more empathetic one. So just so nobody feels excluded if you're not the stereotype or statistic. And you feel stuck because there doesn't seem to be a reason or a meaning for why you've had to suffer this trauma, or this terrible loss. And I think that's part of the issue with me with my ex, even though it's like I understand the breakup part. I understand that part, because it was necessary. I felt at the time for both of us, but certainly for me, it was necessary. But I guess it was, the 4 years that we had been together. Like, why was it necessary to have that? Which I kind of have some ideas because I feel like I have grown a lot as a person from that relationship. And the two relationships after that did not last nearly as long. And that is because that relationship with him, it made me realize how important self love was, and boundaries and all those things. It made me realize what toxic relationships were and that I didn't want one. And like I said, mostly self love. And so since then, that's why my two relationships since then were very short, was because I started putting the love that I was putting into other people, or the love I wanted to receive from other people, and I started allowing myself to have that love for myself instead of needing it in another person. Um, and, that wasn't what, those people wanted, obviously. Especially the one I got with right after that. He wanted to have a toxic relationship, and I wouldn't allow it to go that far. So thankfully, those relationships ended, and I know now where I'm supposed to be at. I'm supposed to be alone. If you're going through stuff like this, you definitely do not need to bring anybody else into your mess. It's like if you are alone and miserable or whatever, like whatever it is negative and bad you are going through, the last thing that you should do is bring another person into that mess. And so, you know, I know that there's a part of me that emotionally, yes, it's like I like the idea of a romantic relationship, even though I know that that's not going to be reasonable for me to have in my life for the next couple years. I don't really even have time. I barely have time to meet with business, prospects and friends and stuff. I don't have time that a relationship would need for me to have. And most of the time, I don't feel the need for that now. So that's kind of the update part too. I'm trying to work on myself still. I completed the 30-day workout challenge, where I was working out. I was doing the Chris Hemsworth workout every other day, which I've got to get the videos edited and posted on my other channel. And so if you guys are interested in that, I will, share some of that here and let y'all know where y'all can go to see those videos. But we're getting close to 30 minutes, and I just wanted to come on here and update you guys and maybe give you a quick message about addiction, toxic relationships, and the what causes people to keep living in trauma why they're not able to move on. And so I believe that's what it is for me. It's just my chemicals haven't balanced out in my brain yet. And every once in a while, that addict side of my brain flares up. And the first thing that addict side thinks of was the most addictive relationship in my life, which was with my ex fiance. Um, that was the most addictive and most powerful. That was my fatal attraction. That was the most, like, he's my drug of choice, I guess you could say. So, yeah, that side of my brain just automatically wants to go for him, even though the rest of me knows that that's a horrible, horrible idea no matter how badly I want for both of us to be healthy people and it work out. I know that that's not possible, especially right now because I have very good intuition and I know that it's going to be at least a couple of years before I even need to look into that. Like this time of my life is for my school and my career. And, in a couple of years from now, I want to have made something of myself. I want to be successful financially, and in the film industry. Like that's what I want to do is go after my dreams, and I can't allow a romantic relationship to interfere with that at this time. Um, and by the way, any of you out there, if you are starting to try to figure out what this self-love thing means and you think you want to love and take care of yourself, don't let other people guilt trip you into thinking that you're selfish or self absorbed or any of those things just because you're choosing yourself for once. Okay. Because I've had some people say that to me, and, that's just simply not the case. Um, and you deserve to be loved most of all by yourself. You are the only person that you need love from. And so, yeah, I guess that's where I'm gonna leave it at because now I'm just kinda rambling and I'm still very tired and worn out, physically and everything. I'm just recovering today. So I'm just gonna leave it there, and I hope that you guys had a happy New Year's and you have a good night. And, I will be shooting my first I'll be directing and shooting my first short film with a local film group in the upcoming weeks. So that's something I'm really excited about, but it's also something that's going to take up a lot of time. And also, my break from school is over. So that's pretty much everything that's going to be going on with that. Hopefully, to record another um, video for the Becoming the Warrior. Like I said, I have some in mind. I don't want to record them unless I'm going to be able to do it properly, and within a 10-minute time frame. I would just really like to try to keep them as short and to the point as possible. Um, but yeah, otherwise, as far as YouTube, I got 2 videos I need to post on the other channel, but I've got to actually put all the clips together and post them. So yeah, a lot of stuff is going on, which is probably one reason why I've been overwhelmed and kind of had a mini breakdown last night. But I hope the rest of you guys are doing okay. And as usual, I will be leaving the groups in the comments after this video goes up. So hope you guys have a great night.